Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to speak about random ruminations today. I like that word. And what I've been thinking about over the past couple of weeks. Number one, Thursday, Alex came by for the interview. It was my first interview with the Oral History Library at UCLA. And so I will be documented in that library, and my legacy will live on far longer than I had expected. We're up to age 27. We're moving quickly because we really didn't have much to say. Cheers. I didn't have much to say about my life in the early years because it was unremarkable in so many ways. He asked what kind of neighborhood I was raised in Phoenix, Arizona. I said middle class. And he said, how did you feel to be middle class? And I said, I don't know. Because everybody in the neighborhood was middle class. And so if you don't have anything to judge it against, it's just how you live. You know, we had as much or as little as everybody else. And everything seemed fine until you move out of your neighborhood. And then you compare. And some people have big houses and some people have small. Some people don't have any houses at all. He asked me about my political view. I didn't have a political view. I was in Phoenix. And I said I did remember 1963, because that's the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I said the thing that I remember most about the Cuban Missile Crisis is the adults were scared. The kids didn't have a clue what was going to happen or if their life was going to end in the next week or so, but the adults sort of knew the ramifications of all this stuff, and that's what I picked up on. It was interesting to see so many adults so afraid of the future. First jobs were unremarkable. High school was unremarkable. Nothing really, it was just sort of regular stuff. I enjoyed drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, and women. And those three things just kept me occupied for 20 years. It was fine. He said, well, now we're going to talk about the 80s, and that's when you came to Buddhism and who you met in Buddhism and that kind of stuff. He says, so I want you to think about that. I want you to think about why you became a Buddhist monk. So we'll start off in Thursday, sort of in that place. And then I have a lot to talk about, and I have a lot of reflections about that. But one of the things that I noticed about me is that one of the many reasons, out of the many reasons I became a monk, one of the reasons was I didn't want a job, I wanted a lifestyle. Because I had had jobs my whole life. And they weren't very satisfying. I guess that's why they call it work and they pay you. But it was something, I really wanted a lifestyle. And when I became a monk, I got it. Now, you may not think that it's much of a lifestyle, because it's an odd lifestyle. When I first moved in here, Reverend Shanti was already here, and there were a lot of other people living here, and they were all a bit odd, except for Reverend Shanti. Yes. They were all a bit odd. They had various reasons for being here, and none of them very good. And I thought to myself, wow, how can so many odd people live together in like this crazy village we call IBMC? And then years later, everybody seemed completely normal, which meant I had become one of them. And that's how life works. I thought about the lottery yesterday, and I bought 2 tickets, hoping I wouldn't win. And I didn't have to worry about that at all, actually. And why was I so afraid of winning? I saw at my current age, it wouldn't be about me at all. It would be about everybody else. And it would be, how am I going to spend the money wisely? How am I going to give it away and allow people to change their life or their view or their politics or their living situation How am I going to do that? And even if I spent like $3 million on a wonderful vacation, you know, you still have like $900 million left. And then I thought about all the things I could do in a positive way. Cat and dog shelters. All over the United States. I could donate thousands of dollars to each one separately, just so cats and dogs would have a better life. I wouldn't donate anything to the LA school system, but maybe something else would be appropriate. Some other form of education. Maybe arts and crafts. Maybe the humanities. You know, all these people are just working for their, you know, MBAs so they can become rich like everybody else. And all those music programs that we used to have in high schools, just on the brink, if they haven't closed already, just on the brink of closing. Art classes, you know, what value would art be? Well, it's valuable to the culture. So I was just thinking of all the things I could do, and it would be literally a full-time job until you died. So you'd have to get a foundation, you'd have to get an accountant, you'd have to get a lawyer, and you'd have to get some nonprofit employees, and you'd all work together to give $900 million away. What a great way to end your life, by that kind of generosity. I thought about how difficult it is to have patience. I was at UU Church of Monte Vista last Sunday in Montclair, and I gave a talk on patience. And I just thought to myself, you know, it is so difficult to be patient. And the older I get, the more difficult it is. And in this neighborhood, I am challenged every day. When you go to Food for Less to get your cat food and your Hostess Twinkies, there are thousands of people there. I don't know where they all came from. The parking lot is full, people walking in, they're riding bicycles to get their groceries. And it's like 3 generations of one family to buy a carton of milk. And the whole line is created by that one family. And I'm thinking to myself, doesn't anybody ever shop alone anymore? Is this an event now to go shopping? And it seems to be the case. But now you're waiting in line. And so I'm directing the line. I'm saying, one guy was on his cell phone. I'm saying, you know, it's okay to move up closer. The space has opened up. He said, I'm in line. I said, I know. But you can vote if you want. And then I thought to myself, do I really want to be the line policeman? Do I really want to go there? Will I be fulfilled by directing people in line? Or will I be hated and have to change lines myself just to avoid? And so I saw this is a problem. And then I'm on the freeway, and there's a lot of people on the freeway all the time. And I'm thinking to myself, I'll never get to where I'm supposed to be at the right time. And why don't I have the patience necessary to drive anymore in Los Angeles? So I saw one reason was time. Time is subjective, and it's also objective. So my watch has objective time. It is actually turning in a circle at a rather constant rate, which allows me to know what time I eat lunch. And it's based on the sun and the moon and the earth turning at a regular rate. And so we've measured that and we call that time. But there's that subjective experience that we've all had in our meditation practice. When we're sitting there and it's only for 25 minutes. And now it feels like an hour has gone by, and we wonder if the leader has died. Should we open our eyes to see if we need to take over and ring the gong? You know, and that subjective experience hits me hard on the freeway, because it seems like things are going slower than they're supposed to. And I'm always going to be late, even though I seem to be always on time. And I have to have that urgency to keep alert and take any lane that opens and take that advantage so I can get there. And I'm just simply exhausted when I get to my destination. I said, I gotta figure something else out. I'm gonna die in the freeway, not because of an accident, you know, because of lack of patience. So then I thought to myself, well, how can I change this? How can I get out of my subjective experience of time? And it dawned on me, all I need to do is pinch myself. And remember in the old days when they say, you know, it's hard to believe this is really happening, and you pinch yourself and then you, wow, this is really happening. And I thought that pinch is always going to happen now. And my mind is racing into the future and racing into the past, and I'm not in the present moment experience of my driving, which is timeless to say the least. So I pinch myself and go, yeah, okay. And I go to my breath, in and out, yeah, okay. And then I forgive. I use the skill of forgiveness. All the jerks on the freeway, I forgive them. It's not their fault. They were just conditioned in the wrong way. And then I forgive myself for expecting things to be different than they are. For wanting it to be just the way it should be. And it never will be the way it should be. It's just the way it is. And rather than it changing for me, I need to change for it. And then, out of forgiveness comes patience. Allowing the moment to unfold in the way it needs to. And there is a natural unfolding of every moment. And we can't pull it or push it or hope it's any faster or slower than it is. It's just the way it is. And finally, after forgiveness and after patience, we come to a place of acceptance. And we accept our lot in this life. We were born to die. There's no place to go and nothing to do. So what's the hurry? Sit back, turn on AM radio, listen to a few hundred commercials. Life is good. So we have forgiveness, we have patience, we have acceptance. And when all of us finally achieve our goal of nirvana or enlightenment, we will find a profound sense of acceptance in just the way it's supposed to be. I was thinking about the fifth precept, and I thought to myself, this is the most important precept of all. Probably, well, maybe second to killing. I think killing is the most important, and not consuming intoxicants is the second most important. And why is that the case? Well, if you live in LA, most people have rehabbed. You know? And you look at all these movie stars and they screw up on, you know, Instagram or something and they go right into rehab. And they figure that's the reason. I'll just be better. 6 weeks in rehab and I'll be the person I used to be. Well, I don't think it works like that. I think it really works like some of the Facebook postings I see. I've been sober for 3 years, 12 months, and 4 days. I think that's how it works. That they unknowingly have seen the value of the fifth precept and are following it, tracking it. Each day becomes one more day to practice conscious clarity. One more day. And they're keeping track in their calendar. How many days have I been conscious this week, this month, this year? So I'm thinking to myself, well, why are we drawn to getting high? What is it because life is so darn difficult? We just have to take a vacation once in a while, you know, and eat far too many Hostess cupcakes or have a 6-pack of beer, whatever your vehicle to getting high is. And I don't know. I don't know if we, after all these eons of being a human and having our special consciousness the way we do, the self and self-reflection, if we've really grown into it. If it's almost sometimes just too much to bear. And sometimes we prefer fantasy over truth, because fantasy is something we can understand, and truth is something we have to understand. And there's a resistance to that. So I see people on Facebook posting all sorts of fantastic things, like, you know, they landed in Area 51 and we have pictures, and there are these, you know, aliens. And you go, wow, how cool is that? But really, did they land? Or did somebody just make up a really good story? How do we ever know? unless we experience it ourselves, unless we go to Area 51. And how do we ever know the truth unless we experience the truth? And I think Buddhism, for me, allowed me to look at the truth in a much different way. Because the Buddha had an empirical perspective. It was what, his truth was what he came to experience. That this intellectual truth is overly complicated and used to manipulate and motivate us in certain ways that allow us to consume and produce. And it works really good. We're all consuming and producing and buying lottery tickets. It's great. But what is the truth of your existence? What is the truth of your being here, now, today, in this moment? What is that truth? And so the Buddha would have said, because he only talked about two things, the Buddha would have said, you know, your truth is that your life is going to be ultimately unsatisfactory because you expect it to be different than it is. You will be like Kusala on the freeway, and you'll never be happy. You'll just be impatient and exhausted. And so, can we come to that place where we look at the world in that way, and yet the world is still magical and perfect, even though we're suffering in this perfect world? Because we have ignorance and are deluded into thinking it's supposed to be this way, and it isn't. And then I just posted this thing I found on Facebook, which was really good. It's a cartoon photo, and it's like a section of the earth. We have a headstone, and then we go down a few feet, and then we have a skeleton. So it's a graveyard, and we see the skeleton, and we see the headstone. And then below, it says, "You and your deeds." That's all it says. You and your deeds. I know. Karma. The only thing that travels with you from this lifetime to the next is everything you said, everything you thought, everything you did. Your deeds, your karma migrates to the next lifetime. And it's so profound. In that little picture of the grave with the skeleton, there was no money, there was no prestige, there wasn't a big house or a cool car. It was just a skeleton and deeds. That's sort of how it started, and that's sort of how it ends. And in between, we have this need to accumulate and reflect and identify with all the stuff that makes us better than everybody else. And that's why I was surprised when I was a young person, thinking back, speaking to the guy from UCLA, that, you know, we never thought about what we had or didn't have. It's just what we had to work with that day. And sometimes we had 2 meals and sometimes 3 meals, depending on who was home and who cooked and who didn't. And sometimes you had to fend for yourself. I got really good at making chocolate pudding. I could hardly wait for the skin to form on top. And then you just eat it, and that would be your lunch, you know. And your parents would yell at you. But you just look at all the stuff we go through in our lifetime, and the end is the same. The end is the same. Now, I have a banjo. I just bought a new songbook. I'm practicing some chords. I'm practicing some songs. And my friend Wendy on Facebook says, you know, your candle is burning. As if, why would you even want to practice some songs? You'll be dead soon. You know? Now, I thought, what a great wake-up call. I got a lot of work to do before the arthritis sets in. You know, I can still make the chords, or before the senility gets there, and I don't remember the next chord or the next verse. But right now I can work on it and work really hard. And it reminded me of a story of the guy in the hospice. And right next to his bed was a book he was reading. Why? Because he wanted to finish the book before he died. Why? It gave you something to do. All this stuff gives us something to do. It's not like I'm going to be in a band. It's not like I'm going to make my living playing the banjo. It's something that occupies free time. It gives me joy. It keeps my hands nimble and my mind alert. I don't expect to get anything more from it. than just a few hours of sort of focus. And that's it. So maybe our life is sort of like that too. Maybe the most we can hope for is just a few hours of focus to really engage, to really see the true nature of what our life is. Okay, I'm going to stop there. And Happy New Year, by the way. 1 year closer to the grave. Anybody have any comments or ideas about what I've said? Yes?
Yeah, I was just, what you just were talking about, having focus for those few hours. And being a novice, you know, I've only been meditating for a few years and attending classes for a few years. Sometimes I feel like I'm distracting myself by occupying myself, by either like writing music or writing text, or that somehow I should always just be present, and I'm not present necessarily when I'm either writing music or writing in that very simple sense.
Could I ask who's there? Who's doing the writing? See, that's the question.
Well, yeah, I think, I'm there and I'm doing it, but I find that...
You're not really there, not really doing it? Is it doing itself?
No.
It could be, couldn't
Well,
it?
not that I know.
And you're just a vehicle?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you don't want to take credit for it doing itself?
Well, no, I think what I'm trying to say is that sometimes I feel like there's a sense of not applying my practice when I'm in those situations, when I'm doing that kind of work. In other words, it's almost an escape from having to practice. Do you see what I mean?
I see what you mean. And in the Vipassana group,
Right.
and also in the Zen group, they say, well, you want to make your life your practice.
Right.
So everything you do, chop wood, carry water,
Right.
or write songs,
Right.
is your practice.
Yeah.
And once that happens, then there's no time you're not practicing,
Right.
no matter what you do.
Right. Okay.
So I think that's probably a healthy way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just another form of practice, writing songs. And you may or may not be there. You know, so many people that I've heard who are good songwriters have often said it was an inspiration. And I don't know where it came from. And I don't know why it was there, but I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I wrote it down, and the next morning I looked at it and it was really good.
Yeah.
And I'm going, where did that come from? And see, I think the whole idea about being human is we don't have to worry about where it came from, because we'll never know.
Yeah.
But now that you got it, what are you going to do with it? You know? Yeah.
Sorry, are you really present when you're practicing?
Yes.
Yeah, more so than at other times,
Yeah.
because I have to.
Because of the focus.
Because of the practice. The practice is making sure your fingers fall on the right frets, and your right hand is strumming in the right way, and the next chord is going to be this. So yeah, you are there. Yeah.
So you occupying your mind rather than being present without having to occupy it in other ways?
Well, I think what happens, interesting to me, is the fact that oftentimes practice turns into performance.
Right.
So there's a total focus of practice, and then there's the total non-focus of performance. That you have to literally step out of the way to let the banjo, guitar, violin, piano play itself. And then you're just the vehicle. And that is a very meditative state. Instead of we're meditating is doing us. And we're sitting there. But there's a certain amount of practice to get to the point. And for me, the irony of Buddhism is this, that we're already enlightened, according to Dogen. We're already there. And the reason we keep practicing is to realize that we're already there.
Right.
So it would be like us practicing to be in Los Angeles to realize we're already there.
Yeah.
And that's the human conundrum, I suppose.
Right.
So in all practice, a performance is the goal. And when performance happens, there's no one practicing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had a practical question. I could thank you for your talk. I could understand talking about life and the end of life is death and so forth, and it's a little bit pessimistic. But what I was trying to figure out is how to inject practice into one's daily work, whether it's paid work or political work or group work where you work with institutions, because that's a little harder. I mean, you could practice yourself, or you can have certain ideas or about things, but then when you're working with in a group situation, which most of us have to do sometime or another, whether it's work, organizing, politics, that seems somewhat difficult.
Yeah. Right. To the first part, pessimism. I love that. The death is pessimistic. And it is, but see, Buddhism doesn't look at it that way. And why? For those who haven't heard this, there was a coroner in Los Angeles who was fired. And he was fired because he kept putting the reason for death as birth. So, see, Shanti, it's a good one. I told that to Reverend Shanti, he goes, So you're right, if we look at death as the final end to our life, but the final end to our life is rebirth. We just have to die first.
But I think it will be reborn in the lower order, I'm pretty sure.
You'll be or will be?
Probably.
Probably.
A lower order.
Well, why is a Buddhist reborn in a high order or low order? Is because of the deeds that they've done, the karma. The karma defines up or down, or the same. Now, good point. In a group, it is difficult to stay focused and concentrated because we are oftentimes distracted by what's going on, and sometimes we're listening so we can respond, so we don't hear what's being said in an appropriate way. I think what we learn from our meditation practice and our concentration practice is we can take concentration into any environment, whether with one person or 10 people or 100 people, and stay focused. So really, taking your meditation into a group would be staying focused on the group, not on yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about so much bringing the meditation into the group, but how to, how would you say it, not manipulate the group, but work with them to,
be present.
For them
To respond in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it happens when you listen and you understand what's being said. And then you know what to say next. If you come in with an agenda,
Right.
if you've been listening to some of these political stump speeches, they say the same thing every time in different cities and different states. So they're not listening, they're not being present. They are working from past and staying in past. As a meditator, we want to come into the present moment and feel it, and understand it, and hear it. And we'll know exactly what to do because of that.
I mean, like Donald Trump is actually listening to a lot of America, that's why he's...
No.
Well, I think a lot of America is listening to him.
Right.
And I think what's fascinating for me is how many people like him. Because most people think he's a bit odd, but you know what? There are a lot of people who are odd just like him. So I'm really happy that those people are sort of coming out now and we go, wow, look how many there are. And look how many people think that's a good way to go. And then we have Hillary, and then we have Bernie, and we have da-da-da. And so, I'll end with this thought. And Reverend Shanti and Reverend Dr. Ratanasara, I went to them and I said to them, being a monk, is it okay to be political? Is it okay to have a favorite? And they say it's good to vote, but you can't have a favorite. Because if Donald Trump walked through that door of IBMC Zendo, we would have to treat him the same way as Hillary or Bernie. Isn't that right, Reverend Shanti? We treat everybody the same. We don't think their ideas are better or worse. They're just a bunch of ideas. And would you like some tea, Donald? Have a seat. So Buddhism, it sort of works like that. Buddhism sort of says, you know, it's okay to have opinions, but you need to treat people in a humanistic way, in a kind way. Don't need to agree with them or disagree with them. So it's really hard for me right now on Facebook not to have any political, what would be the word, cartoons, any political statements, any political one way or the other. I don't have any. I post cat pictures. And it works fine. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Okay, well thank you all for spending some time with me today. Thank you.
Thank you.